an abusive relationship will feel like love because that is how you were raised, or that is what your formative relationships were like. That comfort does not mean it is healthy. And the discomfort of having a healthy discussion and a conflict that ends and you're like, well, that wasn't what I expected. I'm not sure how to handle this. That discomfort can mean, oh, that is how a conflict is supposed to go between two human beings who respect each other and care. Why hasn't that been easy before? Hey friends, welcome back to the Neurodivergent Creative Podcast. Today we're talking about trauma. So exciting. To start off our episode, I would love to give a shout out to our November podcast episode supporters. And these are all paid supporters on my Patreon. So no matter what tier you invest at, and they start at $3 a month, you get a podcast shout out and lots of other fun benefits hanging out with me. It's very exciting. So going down the list, we have Nell, Atan, Katie, Beth, Brennan, Jesse, Nicola, Samaya, Kitty, Amaris. So thank you to all those supporters. I mean, I could be here without you, but you definitely make it easier. So thank you for your support. If you are interested in supporting the podcast and supporting my work with Neurodivergent Creatives, bringing more neurodivergent, queer, disabled creativity into the world, please head over to my Patreon. I am Caitlin Liz Fisher over there, and there will be a link in the show notes for you. Starting at just $3 a month. Some of the tiers have merch, so that's exciting. But aside from that, everybody gets the same benefits, and I'll do a little Patreon commercial later in the show that's better than this. Okay, awesome. Let's get into it. So this topic has come up for me a lot recently. Number one, because I'm on the current upswing after 6 straight months of being pretty fucking depressed. It has not been great in my brain, and that's hard. It's hard to deal with the fact that your brain doesn't really want to participate. Not a strange concept to anybody listening to this, right? Because we're all neurodivergent. That can mean lots of things. Frequently, we're thinking autistic ADHD, but neurodivergence really covers everything that can be different and diverse about the human brain. So this includes mental illness. This includes PTSD and trauma. Trauma literally changes the brain. Thus, it is neurodivergent. So we're going to talk about it. So somebody asked me what I did and what helped to start coming out of that depression. And I don't want to say that I'm definitely out of it and over, because we just had to change the clocks. Today is the US election as I record this. Seasonal depression season is upon us. So many factors are at play. It could get bad again. But for right now, it's been 3 solid weeks that I have felt more like myself. So I'm taking the win, coming in hot to talk about trauma. I am working on an episode, or maybe just a blog post, I'm not sure, about the things that impacted me and helped me sort of climb out of that depressive place that I was in. But then this week, for 2 days in a row, I have had conversations about trauma. And on Monday, I was talking to someone, Megan Griffith. Her business is called The Chaotic Entrepreneur, and she runs a membership called the Neuro Curiosity Club, which I want to get into because it looks awesome over there. But we were talking, and she said that she has learned to treat her trauma like a chronic illness. And that instantly clicked for me, because I have obviously been spending the last 5 years getting used to having a chronic illness. So I have fibromyalgia, which comes with a lot of fatigue, a lot of pain in the body. Some days there's just too much pain. It is hard to be a productive member of society when your whole body is everything hurts and I'm dying.
Everything hurts and I'm dying.
I get it. So this idea of chronic illness and spoon theory. So if you haven't heard of spoon theory, I'm going to give you a very too long didn't read. Imagine that you start off your day with a handful. I have pens, so we're doing pen theory, right? I have a handful of pens, and you wake up and this is how many you have. Okay, I got 6 pens in my hand. If I want to take a shower, that's going to take a pen or a spoon in the original analogy, because this entire theory came up like in a restaurant. Somebody explained what it was like to live with lupus, and she just grabbed up like all the spoons that were on the table and explained it as spoon theory, and that's why we call it spoons, but I'm calling it pens, right? So I got up and took a shower, that's 1 pen. I cooked a homemade breakfast, that's 1 pen. Now I only have 4 more pens like for the day. And the thing is, most people do not have to think about taking a shower, do not have to think about the energy it takes to cook breakfast, do not have to think about, do I have the energy to walk the dog around the entire block today, or do we just need to go out in the yard because I'm not sure like if my bad hip can handle it. And so like the harder it is and the more of these layers of having to like think through the implications on your body, the more spoons even just managing your energy takes. So now I've got 4 pens for the rest of my day. I know that my partner's making dinner, so I don't have to use a pen for dinner. I have like 4 hours of client work that I want to get done today. So let's call that like 2 spoons. And I have a coaching call for my writing incubator tonight. That's a spoon or a pen. And so now I have 1 pen left. Now in therapy once, my therapist was like, and how many spoons do you want to end the day with? And I looked at him and I was like, Jared, what do you mean? What do you mean, how many spoons do I want to end the day with? Because for me, and for, I'm going to go with most, let me know if this is not your experience, chronically ill and disabled people, we use it all up every day. And sometimes if the spoons are gone at 7 p.m., we go to bed. And sometimes the spoons are gone at 7 p.m. and we can like sit on the couch and watch TV until it is bedtime. All of this is like included in the management of that energy. So, oh man, now I don't remember which ones of these were empty. I got it. We're good. Thanks for attending my little memory problem. It's called ADHD, which is also kind of a chronic illness when you think about it, because I have to preemptively give myself focus spoons, right? Like how much focus do I have today versus how much kind of am I dissociating on a given day? Which comes back to like the mental illness and the trauma. Like this is all working together. Our brains are soup. Our brains are really, really cool soup that know a lot of cool stuff and can do a lot of amazing things. But other days, that's just soup. Sorry. So this idea of trauma being treated like a chronic illness means that like you can plan for things that you know are going to kind of set you back. So from the chronic illness standpoint, like I know that in the fall and winter, I'm probably going to sleep more because it's darker outside, and that like kind of makes me feel a little stressy, a little depressy. But at the same time, I really want to make soup and I really want to make nourishing foods, and I like to use slow cooker recipes. So I can kind of trade that off, where I know I'm not going to be using as much of my energy for like cooking a meal from scratch because I can just prep a soup and throw it in the crock pot. So I can kind of conserve spoons there and focus those spoons on going outside when the sun is out, making sure that I walk the dog and get a little bit of sunlight. It's, I'm in Ohio, so I'm not like super far north. We get a decent amount of sunlight, but it's going to get cold. And being cold makes me grumpy. And being too hot makes me grumpy. The weather has a lot to do with my chronic illness. So like, some things in advance. And similarly to like preparing myself for the energy expenditures of fall and winter, I also know that like in March and in August, those are my months when like my trauma kind of comes up. Those are my trauma-versary months. And I have a lot of memories. I have a lot of just like reminders of what happened in those months many years ago. And they're just hard months. And knowing that in advance means I can kind of plan, I can make preparations, I can make sure that I'm not going to be selling anything actively, because some days my energy is just like, no, you're not posting on Instagram today. You're not going to write that blog post. You might notice as a podcast subscriber that I haven't posted in like 4 weeks because we took a little break. That's part of life as a disabled creator. That's part of life as a disabled business owner. To hold yourself to the standard of consistent output is to internalize capitalism. and capitalism's demands on your body and mind for labor and content and extraction. And I don't want to do that. And taking those rests is very uncomfortable because I want to stay consistent. I hold myself to those standards. And at the same time, another part of me is like, no, we're not doing those standards. And that part of me has already gone on vacation and is like eating chips and guac and doesn't care what my to-do list says. Love that for them. But other times, trauma or your chronic illness can just come up out of nowhere and slap you in the face. Sometimes you're going to get triggered. A friend sent me a very sweet reel yesterday of like this Irish or Scottish farmer, like greeting all of the animals on the farm, like by name, like each one had their own name. And he just kept saying hi and like more and more kept coming out of the barn. And he's just saying hello to each of them. But the tone of his voice and his accent was like close enough that it sounded like my ex. And I was like, I can't watch this cute animal video because I don't want to be reminded of my ex's voice. Now, did that like derail me and set me back for days? No, it did not. I simply opted out of continuing to listen because I'm like 6.5 years out of like that abusive situation. But I'm still finding things that trigger me and put me back into like that stress and trauma response. My body doesn't know. Your body doesn't know. Trauma is not like it has made changes to the brain, but when you are having like a traumatic reaction or a flashback or a panic attack, your body is repeating those sensations as if they were happening right now. And this is like, I have anxiety every single day of my life. Like something horrible happens in my imagination and I have to re-regulate my nervous system. Also being autistic, I am very sensitive to like what is happening around the world. And if I watch like too many horrible videos and read too many horrible headlines and articles, I start to internalize these atrocities that are happening and they make my anxiety worse, which then can make my dissociation worse. And then my energy levels are just gone. And that's not to say that like only autistic people care or are affected by genocides happening, multiple genocides around the world right now. Like, it's horrible. The more you learn about political and like cultural things happening, it's so weird to be like political affairs, foreign relations, current events. Like, these should not be current events. These should be old, terrible things that we did in history and then learned from and never did again. I don't understand why we just keep doing horrible things to other humans. And that's debilitating. Like there's a lot that's traumatizing right now. COVID has been traumatizing. Experiencing a global pandemic, seeing people lose their jobs, seeing so many people get sick and die, especially like right at the beginning when we had no idea what was happening. And it was just like this unknown, unknowable, unseeable like horror that was, you know, somebody coughs in a room and you don't know if you're going to die. COVID was traumatic. COVID is still traumatic. Being informed is traumatic. We are all chronically ill right now. We are all chronically traumatized right now. And I really want to, I don't know, just start a conversation about it. I'm not a trauma expert. I'm not a psychologist. I have a degree in psychology, but, you know, I don't practice. I'm not a counselor. Like, I can't therapize you, but I see you. I understand how heavy it is to carry this stuff every day, especially when your own mind is doing it to you. Like, I have this 1-2 punch of anxiety and depression. I didn't even think I had depression because the last time I had symptoms of depression was when I was with my abuser. And after I left him, I no longer had those symptoms. And so I thought I didn't have depression. I just had being abused. Like, it was all just trauma responses. So when I hit this period of depression this year again, it was a surprise to me because I hadn't been depressed in 6 years. And so having to like face that and be like, oh, okay, this is a mental illness that was just laying dormant in my body. And it comes out to play when things feel dire, basically, when I feel out of control, when I feel unsafe, when I can't work as hard or as much or as consistently. And honestly, financially, like financial concerns were 99% of this depression. Business slowed way down for everybody. Like every entrepreneur I know has been having less sales this year. 2024 has been really rough on everybody. Prices are too damn high, right? Which means people are not investing in non-essential services. Like you don't need to hire a book coach, you know? You don't need to hire an autistic marketing coach. You don't need those things to live. Like if your choice is between hiring me and buying groceries, buy the groceries every single time. And like that's just kind of where I've been, is struggling. I've been on the struggle bus for those 6 months and I'm finally coming out and I'm finally able to like pick it all apart and see like what was anxiety doing, what was depression doing, how have my autism and ADHD impacted the ways that I was handling this. And so when Megan said, I have learned to treat my trauma like a chronic illness, I was so on board because I have grieved a lot with my trauma and with my chronic illness. Because you do, there's grief involved. There's grief in knowing it didn't have to be this way. You know, my fibromyalgia, I'm pretty sure, is a result of just years and years and years of stress, super high anxiety, emotional abuse as a child and as an adult. Like, eventually your body is going to start kind of deteriorating. And that's what I'm dealing with. And that's also why I started doing Patreon instead of focusing on only selling things. Because I want to divest from like the capitalist idea that you only deserve money if you are like working yourself to the bone. So I've opened it up to my community to be like, hey, can you support me with $3 a month to make sure that I am taken care of and nourished and fed and my bills are paid so that I don't have to sell things to live and I can simply show up and deliver and give back to my communities in the ways that I do best, which is encouraging people to engage with their creativity and just embrace their unmasked self and to be themselves and to encourage other people to be themselves. Like we create a ripple effect as neurodivergent people, as disabled people, as any type of marginalized person. And I know that as a white person, I have a lot of privilege just like front and center, but beyond that, I am multiply marginalized. I am disabled. I have mental illness. I am fat. People don't like to talk about like anti-fat bias and discrimination, but being fat in our thin obsessed and diet obsessed society is a marginalized identity. I am less likely to get proper care from doctors because of my size. People treat fat people like shit just on the basis of being fat. And it's one of the like last celebrated forms of discrimination. People will greenlight that all day. I am woman adjacent, right? So I'm subject to sexism, sexual harassment, etc. I got all sorts of things going on. I don't have a family of origin anymore. I had an emotionally abusive childhood and I don't talk to my parents. I can't rely on my parents or a family of origin to help me financially. I have in the past when I left my first husband, I stayed with my mom and my stepdad for 6 months to get back on my feet. And that was invaluable. I don't know that I would have been able to do that without them. I am very glad that as my life has changed and I have set boundaries and cut contact, that like I have found that safety in other places. I feel like I am going on quite a ramble. So I'm going to bring it back to trauma really quick. And I also want to talk about like the discomfort of healing. And a lot of people think that we heal and process our trauma in order to like contextualize it and understand it and live with it. We know how to live with the trauma. There are plenty of ways to live with the trauma, some of them healthier than others, some of them outright destructive. But you don't heal your trauma to heal your trauma. You heal your trauma so that you can actually live. Because we can get to neutral. We can just dissociate and be neutral and shut down. And that's easy for us. That is something we have refined to a science. Okay, traumatized people can just mask it. Placid, everything is fine. What is hard is having a conflict with a partner. And then when it goes fine and your partner is like, oh, that makes sense. I'm sorry I upset you. I didn't understand that, and now I do. There's there's so much pain in every healthy interaction after abuse, because you are going to sit there and think, what was it that easy for my abuser to have simply met me where I was, to have simply lived, to have not started a fight about everything? And another thing about healthy relationships after abuse is that we might feel bored because we're so used to the dance of it. We are so used to, like, they lean forward, we lean back. We are learning the steps every time we get into a new relationship. Okay, this person is more angry. Okay, this person goes into more of a guilt trip thing. This person does the silent treatment. We've spent our lives learning how to dance, how to navigate all these different moves. And so if you go up to somebody who's not dancing, they have no pretense of manipulating you or whatever. They're just a person and you're just a person and you are learning how to communicate together. And you go up and you're like, what's the dance move today? And they're like, we are walking in a straight line down the street to go on a nice date. You are going to be like, I'm uncomfortable. I was prepared for dance. Because we are so used to looking for the tells, looking for a sign that this is bad, looking for the thing that is going to prove that we just have a giant neon sign above our head that says, abuse me, use me, manipulate me. I love it. I love when people manipulate me and I can just fall on my sword for them. Let's not do that, okay, everybody? Just come with me to a world of not doing that anymore. You don't have a neon sign. The problem is that abusers will try to abuse anyone, and people who are not primed for that sort of dance, right? People who didn't grow up seeing their parents dance these steps, people who didn't have a very formative early relationship where they learned this dance. Most people are not looking for dance steps. Most people are like, I don't like this manipulative shit you just did, so we're going to break up. I do not want to have a second date. They try it on everybody. What is different about you is you know the dance. And so you're not even thinking about it. You're just like, hell yeah, I know this dance. I know these steps. And an abusive relationship will feel like love because that is how you were raised, or that is what your formative relationships were like. That comfort does not mean it is healthy. And the discomfort of having a healthy discussion and a conflict that ends and you're like, well, that wasn't what I expected. I'm not sure how to handle this. That discomfort doesn't mean that something is wrong. That discomfort can mean, oh, that is how a conflict is supposed to go between two human beings who respect each other and care and want to be on the same team. Why was that so easy? Why hasn't that been easy before? And then that sucks. And then you're like, well, this is too much for me to handle. So you push the person away, you break up with them, you, I don't know, spiral into anxiety and have to you've got snot running down your face as you try to explain to them, I'm not upset with you. I just don't understand what's happening right now. And it's fine. That may or may not have happened to me recently. I came home after buying dog food and just had a nice face down, screaming into the pillow meltdown because I was so overwhelmed and I felt so worthless. And the people who care will care. The people who aren't there to manipulate are going to treat you like a person. And a person who is manipulative or abusive is going to be upset that you are operating outside your parameters. That's the difference. That's what you want to look for in those uncomfortable moments and that discomfort when you are navigating, what is a healthy relationship after abuse? So yeah, discomfort, normal, to be expected. Because the discomfort is in actually allowing yourself to have nice things. It is actually allowing yourself to believe that you are worthy of love without having to earn it. It is actually believing that you are worthy of a living wage supported by your community, mutual aid style, and you don't have to hustle for every dollar that comes into your bank account. It is normalizing peace, calm, regulation over run, run, run. Find safety, hide, run, find safety, hide. We cannot live like that. And under capitalism, that is the request a lot of the time. Capitalism feels like having to run, find something that is safe for now, stay there till you can't stand it, and then run again. And that's also what being in abusive relationships feels like. So my wish for you, number one, my wish for me and for you is that you go check out my Patreon and pick a tier that supports you and your budget so that you can help me make more episodes of this podcast, so that you can help support me in hosting free workshops and talking about this kind of stuff. My other hope for you is that if you are a traumatized person, that you allow yourself to do something soothing, calming, regulating this week. And the message that you internalize is, I deserve to feel peace. You deserve to feel peace. It doesn't have to be all the time. Nobody feels peaceful 100% of the time. And if you do, you are like, I want to know your secrets or to have some of your drugs. But you can find a little moment of peace and don't let anybody take that from you. That's yours. You get a little piece of peace as a treat. So that's my wish for you. I love you so much. There's nothing you can do about it. And I will see you in 2 weeks. We are going down to a bi-weekly podcast for a while for mental health and financial reasons. And we'll be back as soon as possible. Okay, goodbye.